Okay, Donna, can you hear me? Wait, is that on correctly?
I can hear you.
Oh,
Did you hear that?
I can hear you.
Yeah.
And
I
then
can
Michelle,
hear
can you hear us? Okay, yeah, we're good. Back to mute.
Oh, sure. That's the way you like me.
And Sheila, can you hear me? Okay, heads up, we're going live. And Sergio, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So keep your mic on mute.
Okay.
Until you're doing your speaking.
And
so
then When I'm
Well,
set to speak, do I share my screen for the presentation or I just guide the...
no, Donna's shaking her head. No, she can explain in detail, I think.
Okay.
We're going to do the flag salutes so that everybody will see the flag shortly when the board joins back from closed session. And you guys will see a flag presented from inside the Zoom meeting. And then after that, they'll proceed as normal.
Okay.
As far as the presentation goes, the presentations are on the board agenda, which is public. So if people are scrolling through the board agenda online, they can see the presentations. So we won't present them in the middle of everybody's faces in the Zoom session.
Got it. Okay, I'll just reference the slides.
And the board has the presentations also, so everybody can follow along through the board docs.
Perfect.
Does that make sense?
Yes, perfect sense. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to be mute now.
I'm testing something. Can you hear? You can hear me?
Yes, Cal, I could hear you.
I have 3 systems here. I have a external audio computer speakers. I have your headset, and I have the camera microphones. I have 2 microphones, and I don't know. I'm not sure which one's working. You can hear me? Okay, that's good. I don't need this thing then. This is...
Yeah, you're fine.
Oh, all this hurting my ears all this time for nothing. Hey, when the meeting starts, are we going to be visible to the public too, or just within the group here?
I'm not sure I understood your question.
Say when when the public's watching this, they will be able to see the board members, right?
Yes, they're watching it now. It's live.
Okay. Us too?
Yes. The regular board meeting is not begun yet. We're still in closed session, but all of the sessions are open and are muted at the moment. So if you're waiting for the meeting to start, this is the right place.
Okay. Let's see, Joey, are you hearing me?
Members here.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I'm admitting people now.
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Okay. I think everybody's present now.
X-Wing Squadron is here.
Or Avengers Assemble.
I'm showing my age.
Okay, first, before I start the meeting, I would just like to ask everyone who's participating on Zoom to please keep yourself muted. We do not need any kitty cats or dogs barking. Perfect. Everyone's present. Everyone looks muted. Okay. And hang on one second. Okay. Okay, can everyone hear me? Can I get a thumbs up from someone? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to start the meeting now. Please bear with me. I am going to call this meeting to order, this regular meeting of the Merced City School District Board of Education. And I'm going to ask Ms. Kazakos to please call roll.
Yes, Emily Langdon.
Present.
Shane Smith.
Present.
Miguel Lopez.
Here.
Adam Cox.
He's muted.
Here.
Thank you. And Jessica Kazakis, I am here.
Very good. All right. In closed session, the board did take action. And please bear with me. Okay, in closed session, on a unanimous vote, the board took action to ratify the resignation of employee number 2973, effective June 30th, 2020. And that was the only action taken. And again, I appreciate everyone's patience as we are learning how to run meetings at home. Okay, Dr. Rogers, I believe, has a flag for us. Is that right, for the pledge? Ah, perfect. Ms. Kazakos, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, if everybody will please stand. Ready, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Wonderful. Thank you for procuring a flag. Okay. Next, we are at public speaking information. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we're obviously operating under a slightly different rules per the state of California, and in accordance with the conditions of the governor's executive order. This meeting is being held remotely. We did accept public comment up until 4 p.m. today on items by either email or by voicemail. I understand that there are public comments that have been received for items not on the agenda. And I'm going to ask Mr. Horta to please read them into the record.
Mr. President, we actually have one public comment tonight, and it's from Helen Tong. And Helen says, quote, "My concern is, why don't you allow teachers to use Zoom for online teaching of the kids instead of the online apps, and allow the teacher to use whatever they want that is more convenient? I believe kids will like Zoom better and can view the other students during the instruction." End quote. There were no additional comments received for items not on the agenda or items on the agenda.
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to move now to the next item, which is 5A on the agenda. Board members and the superintendent may report on activities such as school visits, meetings, and conferences. And I will start with Ms. Kazakos.
I have not had any official board visits or things like that, but as a parent, I have gone to participate in our meal pickup program. And I just want to take this moment just very quickly to say thank you to all of our staff that are out there working so hard to make sure that our community gets fed. It's appreciated very much. You guys, all that work for us, know our community and how important it is that we keep our students fed, especially during this time of uncertainty. And so I just want to say thank you very much for doing that.
Perfect. Dr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. President. So I want to echo Ms. Kazakos. I think we've got a lot of lunch day heroes who are still working, who are packing lunches for our kids, for our families. I just want to say thank you as well. I had a chance to visit the food pickup site at Ada Givens in Burbank since our last board meeting, and saw a lot of people having a good time, listening to music and dancing a little bit too. So just proud of everybody and look forward to seeing folks at our other school sites in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. Dr. Langdon.
Yes, so I have not been visiting schools either. I've been staying at home, and it's sad because I enjoy this more than anything, is seeing the kids in their natural habitat and seeing the classrooms. So I have been home, and I have been on Facebook, and I have been checking in with friends who, many of whom are parents. And so I just keep hearing story after story of how kids are they miss school. They love their schools. The schools do so much more for them than we sometimes give them credit. So again, repeating all of the kudos to the teams that it takes to put together our 18 sites and make these good places for children. It's funny, the kids are kind of lonely. What I'm hearing is, they miss their friends, they miss their teachers. So when the phone calls came around, and I got one as a parent, the parents were sharing that the kids just love to hear that their teacher cared, that they called, that they're excited to kind of, maybe not super excited about the remote learning part of it, but just the connections again. So I appreciate the personal outreach. I think it was super important. It was very human and important, and I applaud all the efforts we're doing to make this as supportive for the kids as we can. So thanks to everyone's hard work.
Thank you. Mr. Lopez.
Yes, I just want to echo the same sentiments as my colleagues. Just thank you to all the teachers and staff that have just been putting just a tremendous amount of work to ensure that our kids are getting the best education they can in light of the current situation. And so with that, I haven't done any school visits. I've also been observing the stay-at-home order, but I have still been participating in CSBA related activities. And so and with that, I've gone to a legislative committee meeting with CSBA, which we had last Friday, and we're kind of monitoring the current situation with the state, as there's been bills that have been coming in related to the COVID-19 situation. And so we're actually having a meeting tomorrow as well. And so we're just trying to monitor it closely and try to give the best guidance to CSBA staff as we can.
Wonderful. Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, President Cox. I do have a report this evening. I'd like to begin by thanking all essential staff who are working through this pandemic to meet the needs of our students and their families. Schools may be closed, but school is definitely not out. As we approach the end of the 2019-20 school year, we will increase essential staff to properly care for our students, plan for the next year, and maintain our facilities. Here's some of the work that we've been doing. Since we closed schools on March 18th, our classified staff and administrators have successfully fed tens of thousands of students breakfast and lunch. No child has been turned away. To date, we have served more than 382,105 meals. We will continue to feed students through the first week of June, and special thanks to MOT Director Doug Williams for overseeing this process, in addition to making sure our schools are deep cleaned and helping to prevent the spread of the virus. Additionally, we've been working on device distribution. In just 6 days under Greg Blount's leadership, the IT department and site administrators have distributed 3,500 Chromebooks and 1,420 iPads for families, for a total of 4,920 devices to keep our students connected so that they can continue to learn. Other updates include the work in distance learning under Assistant Superintendent Paula Heupel's leadership. She has led our efforts in creating and launching a brand new distance learning program called MCSD at Home. Teachers have participated in over 40 training sessions to increase homeschool communication, deliver standards-based curriculum, and receive student work and progress data remotely. This week, teachers across the district will be sending out lessons and emphasizing digital citizenship and remote learning expectations, with formal instruction beginning May 4th. Summer distance learning is also something we've been planning. That work the design work is underway, and we plan on expanding the number of students that will participate through distance learning. With this model, we may also be able to extend the dates of the summer distance learning plan in order to help try and close that achievement gap. And we wanted to take a moment to acknowledge academic pentathlon success. We need to congratulate the 6 students from Cruikshank Middle School who were recently recognized for their accomplishments at the MCOE Academic Pentathlon. The event was held in February, just before social distancing prevented large groups from gathering. Our students competed against 340 other middle school students from all over the county, marking our district's triumphant return to the competition. 8th grader Nicole Nguyen won first place overall. Fellow Cruikshank Tiger Caitlin Rockholt achieved 3rd overall. Their team won 5th overall, among many other individual awards. We can be proud of their huge accomplishment with less than 2 weeks of preparation. Go Tigers. And that completes my report this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. And I will report, I obviously have not been to any school sites. I have, however, been in a number of meetings, both for CSBA. I think my colleagues will recall that I'm on the conference committee this year, which CSBA does plan to continue to offer in person, at least as of now, in December in Anaheim. However, they have already started, I guess they're going to kind of bifurcate it. They're going to offer a fully digital version of the conference too this year for people that want to participate and remain home. So that's been interesting participating in that. And I've also had the opportunity, along with Dr. Smith, to attend a couple of meetings over the past month on facilities and looking at what we're going to do with our long-range facilities master plan. And that is my report. We're going to move now to written communications. Dr. Rogers, are there any written communications?
None at this time.
All right, thank you. We did, I'm looking at item 6A on the agenda. We did previously accept public comment. we are going to move to item number 7A, regarding district committees. Dr. Rogers, do you want to start us off? Do you have anything to say?
Thank you, President Cox. As we know, the work of educating over 11,000 kids is complex, and there's just a lot to be done. And Ed Code by itself doesn't give us the details that we need in order to get that work done. It involves the board's leadership as the voice from the community, and oftentimes public school boards organize very specific subcommittees whose job is to take into account the immediate needs of the community as well as the existing policy language to put together a workable, executable plan for staff. In this particular case, we have our board that's taking on a number of challenging projects, and on the table today would be a discussion of potential subcommittees that you'd like to deploy to support staff and give us direction in meeting those needs.
Perfect, thank you. So my fellow board members, I was envisioning a discussion now, and our takeaway items, hopefully at the end of this discussion, is which committees, which and how many committees we are going to establish immediately, along with the specific missions that we want to give them, and any time constraints if we're going to create any ad hoc committees. And then I will take all of that information along with the information on which of you expressed interest. I know Dr. Smith has already shared with me some things that he is interested in serving on. And we will return at the next board meeting with an action item. Technically, per our bylaws, all committees are created and dissolved by the president with the approval of the board. So we'll basically bring an action item back next month for us to vote on. So that was my goal for today, is to come away with a couple of concrete things to take action on for next month. So with that, who'd like to start us off? Dr. Smith, you look like you want to start us off.
I'll be happy to. So in terms of where do I see a board subcommittee being useful, I can think of 3 areas. First being what I'll just call a budget subcommittee. I would see this as being kind of a standing formal board subcommittee, perhaps with rotating membership due to time. But you know, this board has talked a lot for the last year and a half about putting our money where our priorities are. And you know, I think we still need to work with Dr. Rogers and executive staff to figure out exactly procedurally what that means. But I can't imagine that doesn't happen without something more like a more nimble day-to-day, you know, touch point to the board. So I actually think a number of my colleagues would be fantastic to fill 1 or 2 seats on such a subcommittee. I can make some suggestions if they won't volunteer, but I think the budget subcommittee is 1. You know, 2, President Cox, you and I, to this point, I think just because of availability and interest, have been sort of serving as a maybe already a de facto facilities subcommittee. I really think that that's a valuable point of contact for staff from the board. You know, there's a lot of decisions that have to be made in, you know, small little things. You know, what should we be looking at for real estate opportunities? You know, how do we prioritize projects, right? I think it's been helpful for staff to sort of hear from us, kind of a triage point, but then still bring decisions back to the full board. So I'd like to see a facilities subcommittee continue, and I'd like to continue to serve on it. And a third one, I see this kind of more as an ad hoc, time limited sort of thing, but I do think the board needs to work with Dr. Rogers, perhaps over a defined period of time, to really read all of our bylaws, read our policies, and maybe make some suggestions for cleanup. You know, make sure, I'm sure we're in compliance with law, but you know, our compensation policies where they need to be, our values and equitable values, are they fully represented in the bylaws that have been written by people who are probably no longer serving on the board? So I think there's sort of like a bylaw review subcommittee that I'd like to see as well. So those three would be my proposal for further discussion.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I'm right there with you. There is one thing that I also neglected to mention that we should discuss tonight. We do, per the bylaws, have the capability, the authority to appoint committees that are either composed solely of board members or a mixture of board members and others. So keeping that in mind, I think some of these we may want to have, whether it's certificated and classified or public/parent representation. So please keep that in mind as well. Thank you, Dr. Smith. Dr. Langdon, I'll move to you next for your thoughts.
I think I have a couple thoughts. My first thought is I echo, I feel like I've been on this board for 3 years, and the budget information is overwhelming. I feel like probably every meeting I could sit down with Ms. Parker. And so I feel like that would be something that at least 2 board members could do a deep dive on that, and still probably not feel we've done diligence. So I think that's important. I think the rotating expectation, we should all have this experience and expertise, but maybe we all don't have to do that all the time. So I just think we look at an incredible amount of financial information every single board packet, and we've asked for help and we've had coaching from the district. I just think that's something that that is our responsibility, and we need to. I don't want to get down in the weeds, but I also don't want to approve things that I really don't understand the implications of. So yes, I second or third that wherever we are on this. I go in a different direction than facilities and bylaws. I was thinking about, again, sort of ad hoc, short term, because I'm an assessment coordinator and I want to know, how did we do? Not in a way to be critical, in a way to say, what did we learn? What can we do? What can we expect when these kids come back into our classrooms and our environments, our schools? I think there should be some sort of task force on the distance learning, distance supports, lessons learned, and because we're not sure where this is going to go, and we should be doing the woulda, shoulda, couldas, and the next time we know, and hey, we learned something we can actually apply in the normal world in this way. So if we're not teasing lessons out of all this, we've missed some opportunities. So I don't know if that's board, but that's when I hear committees, I think this is a learning opportunity and we should be learners. And then the thing that from the beginning, when we first started talking about committees, I think it's really important. When I hear task force, I think about people who get access to data that not everybody needs to look at, and pore over it and summarize it and figure out what is going on with our achievement gaps, what is going on with our commitment to literacy, how can we truly assess where we are as a district, honestly, and make sure that we stay pointed in the right direction as we've kind of come with our very unified focus on literacy and closing the achievement gap with this, with the equity lens. So that may be 6 different committees all buried in there, but that's what we said we would do, and we need to do diligence there. So those were my initial thoughts. But again, open to lots of, we don't need to have 37 committees. I get that.
So Dr. Langdon, I think for clarification, so we're good. I'm counting a second on budget committee. And then I wasn't sure if your last 2 points were perhaps separate committees or a combined, ed services committee, for lack of a better term. What are you really, do you have any further thoughts on that?
So I think that's fair enough. I think that one might be like short-term, near distance, which is we have in a very short period of time put some things in place, and we're super reactive and as responsive as we could be. And I think that we should take a look at that. So maybe that's one group with an ad hoc look at how did distance learning and distance supports go? What did we learn, and what do we need to shore up in the future? But a longer term look at, we've talked about an equity lens toward our literacy and our student achievement. We've talked about having that, achievement gap really addressed. I think that's a longer term. I think that's, that should come up every single meeting, just like budget does, right? So I think those maybe are two, and maybe two very different structural, structures and timelines.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Kazakos, I'll ask you next if you have any thoughts.
As to what type of committees I would be interested in specifically.
Or if there are any other committee types that have not been mentioned that you think are a good addition right now.
I really like Emily's idea of the distance learning, but then the long-term part too, and then you said like a general ed services. I would be interested in something like that. You know that safety has always been my absolute very top priority, so safety is one that I personally would like to be involved in or considered for. I think safety is very important, and budgeting, of course, is another very important one as well. So for me personally, I would say those three areas: safety, some type of ed services, or a combination, or if it was different committees maybe, and then the budgeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lopez?
Yeah, so I think it makes sense to kind of go about it slowly in terms of, building up the standing committees over time, right? There's probably a few that are more pressing right now that should be established. So I think budget, certainly is an important one. Probably, items that are more topical to what's going on right now with COVID-19 and whatnot, distance learning, as was mentioned by some of the other colleagues. But at the same time, I think it would be nice down the road, to see standing committees for things like, and I think that Shane touched on it briefly, related to the bylaws, right? So maybe a policy committee, perhaps something related to technology, given the amount of technology that we're implementing in the classroom and what we're having our kids use as well. I also think it's important to perhaps establish something related or along the lines of equity, right? Just ensuring that's something that's in the forefront for us right now, and that might be something that I'm not sure if that should be immediately established or something that should at least be built out this year sometime, to have some sort of an equity committee. But in the meantime, I definitely would be interested in being a part of the budget committee.
Oh, excuse me. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lopez.
Thank you.
So to summarize, I think I'm hearing a budget committee unanimously. Facilities committee from several of you. I also think it's important. I would say it's probably one of the things that could wait if we weren't already engaged in moving forward with an update of the facilities master plan right now. I do think it's very important. I'm also hearing a social distancing or a distance learning / transition back to school or transition back to classroom committee is kind of, I think what I'm capturing. And those were the ones that I kept hearing for now. And it does sound like we obviously have interest in some others down the future. Did I miss anything?
Ms. Kazakos brought up safety, and the comment I have is relevant to that. So I think part of our discussion too is where do we want to form a committee, and where do we think there might be a need for some more regular board member input, but maybe perhaps not a full committee. So for example, Dr. Langdon has been involved and is teaching students at UC through distance learning portals. She has a daughter who's in high school. She's seeing what the high school district has implemented. I mean, I would be grateful if there was a way for Dr. Langdon to somehow have more regular input in our distance learning programs and development. Whether or not that needs a full committee, I would think not, and I don't want to, dissuade any of my colleagues from getting involved. That's not the point of this, but I just know that there's a lot of work that people are doing, nearly around the clock to get that platform up and running. And I would just be worried that if the board now wants to have a committee on it, that would just create more bureaucracy, frankly. So maybe something like that needs to be kept more nimble. I'll just throw that out for discussion. Perhaps the same thing with safety. right? I mean, I would be grateful if Ms. Kazakos could join our district safety committee and sort of represent the board. I don't know that we need to take a separate look at it, separate and apart from what staff has already been doing on a regular basis.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. I think I agree with you, especially when it comes to safety. I think that, you know, since we have an existing district safety committee that's composed of staff, we have an existing district health committee that's composed of staff. I think that those are, you know, good standing committees that we should appoint board members to.
Yep.
To represent us on. I don't think there's a need for separate, you know, board-only subcommittees on those. In my opinion, I don't know, Ms. Kazakos, if that satisfies. I know that you've given a lot of feedback over the years, and I think that's one of the best forums. I also think that there's not a problem necessarily in asking a board member to liaise with staff on something without forming a committee. And I think that's, you know, a wonderful thing if we want to ask Dr. Langdon. And it works if we're all respectful and mindful of our positions as board members and not district administrators, right? But I think it would be great to ask someone like Dr. Langdon to take on committing to getting briefings and meeting with Dr. Rogers and his staff around the development of some of this stuff, so that there is someone there at the board member thought process going on. Dr. Langdon, you had your hand up.
I was going to talk about the safety committee, which is not only do we have one, a standing one, but we brought in a speaker, and he vehemently encouraged that the board have representation on that committee, and that was a while ago. So I feel like, you know, that should have already happened. So maybe we can just, you know, figure out what, we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but it would be great to have a board member and their 2 cents on there. And then they could give reports to the board. I think that was something that I thought was a done deal, and it then never came to fruition. So
you're right. We shall appoint. Okay. Looking back at the board members, does anyone else have any thoughts on other committee types? I think everyone kind of got everything out. I don't see anyone nodding their head. Okay, so as far as budget facilities and
ad hoc policy committee.
Do we want to go with an ad hoc policy committee right now?
Well, here was my thought is I don't think that is a standing committee. That sounds to me like let's just assume that we were going to have a normal summer. That's sort of like a 6-week focused project that get in, make some decisions and get out, so to speak. It could be delayed given, you know, COVID and everything, but my personal belief is it's something we should probably try to do in the next board year or so.
So me personally, I'm scared of policy. I just spent a year and a half on another board on the policy subcommittee, and I'm not willing to go back through that. It takes, you know, quite a bit of time and quite a bit of reading. So I 100% agree with you that it's needed. So as long as we get some board members interested now, I think there's not a problem appointing an ad hoc committee to do that. I'm definitely taking myself out of the running.
Well, look, you all know how much I just love reading documents for detail. So if there's interest, other board members are interested, I will volunteer for that.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Smith. So kind of going back to the distance learning slash, you know, reintegration of next school year committee, does that sound like something? I just want to look for confirmation beyond Dr. Langdon that that's something that we're interested in. I know that I am. Okay.
Yeah, I'm interested.
Perfect.
Same.
Okay. So I think it's probably safe to say that I'm assuming that budget committee we would keep to the membership of the board. Probably the same for policy. However, the educational committee, without a better name right now, What's the board's pleasure on participation in that?
I think it's a great suggestion. I wish I had thought of it. At the end of the day, right, I think other than our money has to go where our mouth is, right, we want kids to learn to read across the board. My only hesitation is I feel like that needs to fit in with the superintendent's strategic plan and be a part of that document and that process. So I'll just register my vehement support for it, but maybe that's something that's worth discussing at our workshop on May 2nd.
Okay.
I agree. I also feel like there's, I feel like these two, the board clarity that and that we're getting and what our role is and what those structures that we need to be able to support that role and do diligence are emerging the same time as a leadership change and a change in the team. So I don't want us to, cross paths and bump into each other. So I feel like, we've kind of generated these buckets that are important to us and characterize the work that we do, but I don't want to put anything in place until we see the rest of the landscape. Does that make sense? I want us to dovetail. We need to work in conjunction. We are a governance team with the superintendent, and we need to work with his team. So I'm sort of the mind that we've generated some topics that aren't surprising. We've been talking about these things in some way, shape, or form for a while. So can we, unless there's some urgency to get something up and running immediately, I feel like this is reflect on this and figure out what the other pieces are before we put them together.
Yeah, I think that
I'm not going to serve on policy either, FYI.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think we can probably also circle back around at our next workshop on May 2nd as well. I think these probably can wait, with the exception of the budget committee. I'd really like to see them, dive in to work right now so that we can get a better understanding. I think this is probably a good time too. The state's not going to be closing its books until August or September. So I imagine that most counties and cities and school districts will just be adopting interim budgets July 1st. So
I agree with that. I think we need to get the facilities committee appointed as well, because we've got an ongoing master plan refresh.
Yes, thank you. You're right. Okay, so unless there is any further discussion, I just want to keep us moving along. I think that we have established what we want to do in general. We are going to circle back around on May 2nd, as well as our next regular board meeting, to fill in some of the gaps and then to take action on some things at the next regular board meeting. And unless there is anything else, if I missed anything or misrepresented anything, please let me know now. Okay, I think we're good. Thank you all. I appreciate that. And I'm really looking forward to, thank you, Dr. Langdon. I'm really looking forward to some of the committee work. I'm very excited. And then I'll work with Dr. Rogers on that item, and then he can kind of provide us with a plan to go forward with staffing and support and mission and stuff like that. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Okay, let me pull up the agenda here. We are going to move now to the report section. We are at item 8A, student attendance and discipline. And I do believe, I'm not sure if this is Ms. Hoypel or Mr. Mendez, so someone can take it away.
Ms. Hoypel, why don't we go ahead and have you start with an introduction there.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Let me get my video going. Good evening, everybody. And we are pleased to have a report by Mr. Mendez, our Director of Pupil Services, presenting an updated information for you on our attendance and our suspension rates, comparing the results from last year to the most current results that we have for this year with our local indicators. So with that, please welcome Mr. Mendez.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, distinguished board members, Dr. Rogers, cabinet members. I would like to begin this presentation by acknowledging all of the relentless work, the perseverance, and the passion exhibited by everyone in Merced City School District. I have garnered a more defined appreciation of the work done by sites and support services to ensure that students are successful. So with that, I believe everyone has a copy of the presentation. Before we begin and we move on to the second slide, I want to make 2 notes that, as Ms. Hoypel mentioned, this is information mostly comparing last year to this year, just to take into account that this year's information is projected because we have information up to the last full calendar month, which is February. Also, please note that in the appendix, which is slide 7, the first box should read slide 3, and the second box should read slides 4 and 5 respectively. So with that, we'll go ahead and begin. So if everyone could please turn to the second slide. And the purpose of Pupil Services is to make sure that the district stakeholders are supported the best way possible. And to garner this, districts are tasked to create a balance for that student success. And as you can see in the PowerPoint presentation, I have for everyone a depiction of the balance of the factors we have to balance, both district school factors and external factors. And these 2 types of factors really influence our approach to how to best support students. Our goal is to make every single student the most successful possible while taking into account these measures and these requirements from both internal bodies and external bodies. Slide 3 shows you 2 facets of Pupil Services work to support our student success. Safety, that was aforementioned, and supports and services are directly derived from the board priorities. Part of our safety approach through Pupil Services is ensuring training. This year, 18 sites have undergone suicide training and anti-bullying training. We've offered also 13 trainings, to both initial trainings and refreshers for crisis prevention through the Crisis Prevention Institute, which is de-escalation training and skills. Along with that, all 18 of our sites analyzed, reviewed, and updated their safety plans. And they also, all 18 of our sites also conducted off-site evacuations successfully. And the appendix has all this data that I'm providing during the presentation. We also collaborated with both local and state agencies with regards to safety. More so, that collaboration was accelerated with our Department of Public Health during the COVID crisis. We are in, if not daily, weekly communication with many sectors of public health to ensure that we're doing everything possible during this pandemic.
Mr. Mendez, yes. I apologize for the interruption. Is it possible for you to share your screen to show the slides that you're referencing?
Yes, of course.
There's a lot of details there that it might be helpful for the board to see what you're talking about at the same time.
Yes, I will do so.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, you're welcome. So another component that we work with in Pupil Services is ensuring the supports and services that they're timely and they're targeted. We had over 74 professional development offerings that included trauma-informed practices, positive behavior intervention and supports, conscious discipline, and items like the Parent Project for parents. We also support social emotional lessons through our counselors. Our counselors have anywhere between 40 and 100 students on their caseload per site, per respective site. Along with that, we have behavior supports through not only our counselors, but our board certified behavior analysts. Our 4 behavior analysts have approximately 180 students on their current caseloads. And we also provide social services outreach. Our social workers are working with 160 families currently and continue to do so during the school closures. Along with that, we have health and wellness. Our nurses make sure to keep up to date the medical plans for students, vaccination information, and also diabetic care amongst other specialized care for our students. Lastly, part of our safety and our supports is the threat assessments that we conduct. This year, we have conducted and followed up on 120 threat assessments. So those supports, the safety and supports and services, get us to the data. And 2 indicators that we work with within Pupil Services come from the California dashboard, and those are chronic absenteeism and suspension rates. With regards to chronic absenteeism is based on 10% of the school year. And you see 2 columns here of data. You see accumulative data for the 2018 and 19 school year. That is for 180 school days. So a student that is chronically absent would have missed 18 days or more of school. Currently, we had 100, we were, because of the COVID crisis, we did not fulfill our entire 180 school year. So our projected information there in red that you see is based on 118 school days. So the percentages you see there are based on students being absent 12 days or more. So we can make the assumption that if we were to continue with the whole school year, those percentages there would drop, okay, would go down. Something else that I want to know is that the percentage and the information you see there, you see the percentages next to each respective group. So overall, during the 2018-19 school year, 10.6% of our students were chronically absent. Up to the end of February, we were at 12.3 overall. That's 11,000 students plus. The rest of the information is respective to their respective groups. So 10.6% of Hispanics were Hispanic students were chronically absent last school year, compared to, as of the end of February, 12.8%. And you can see the other percentages that are here reflective of last year compared to this school year. We acknowledge that despite the fact that our trends are reflecting that we are making gains in chronic absenteeism, we also acknowledge and see that we have lots of work to do to continue engaging students and families to make sure that they attend school regularly.
So, Mr. Mendez, just a question on your on the data. I mean, don't we have more absences during the winter months during a non-COVID year? Meaning, if you overrepresent, say, lower attendance in December, January, February, it could actually be that our numbers are about the same if they were able to be averaged out over a normal school year.
Correct. Correct. They could be the same, or they could be slightly lower.
But either way, we've got a problem if we've got more than 10% of our kids who are chronically absent.
Either way, we're going to continue making sure that we engage the most students possible and families so that we decrease these percentages. Yes.
Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Do we have some aspirant institutions that we think, like, do we have a number that we think is our current goal? If it's not 10.6 or 12.3, how far are we from where you want to see us?
Well, our last year's percentage, and then what this year's projected percentage was trending towards, was either at or below this regional area with regards to chronic absenteeism. So we're either right there with the state or below the state, and we compare very favorably to neighboring districts. So I'm not sure if there's an exact number, but the lower the better. Part of the goals that Mr. Meisenheimer established for the beginning of this school year was to be under 10%. We weren't going to reach that more than likely this school year. That doesn't mean that we stop trying.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I can, we're jumping in here. I'm not sure that I have an answer for what the correct percentage is. I do feel that 10% overall chronic absenteeism is far too much. It certainly shouldn't be double digit. And if I recall correctly, the board for years had adopted an informal policy, or formal some years, of a 95% attendance. And so I certainly think that we should cut that number in half at least.
Yes, well, and I would agree. I agree completely with you, Mr. Cox. Now, this is chronic absenteeism. The ADA, I think that you're mentioning, the overall percentages, the average daily attendance, that's a different percentage, and that compared last year was at 95.76%, while this year we were projected towards 95.35%.
Thank you for making that distinction.
Yes. So this is just the students that missed 10% or more of a school year, versus what I think you're mentioning is our average daily attendance, which the data is provided in the appendix. So moving forward with suspension rates, and so once again, suspension rates continue to decline for some, but not for all. So part of our work moving forward is to make sure that not only do these numbers continue to drop, but that we're continuing the work that's already going on with connecting to families and students so that they attend school, but also are not suspended while in school. So as you can see here, same setup as the previous slide. You have last year's, which was a cumulative for 180 days, and the red column is projected for this school year as of the end of February. And you see that once again, we are making significant gains in suspension rates, but we're not necessarily closing the gap like we would like to with regards to disproportionality for some groups. So we will continue our efforts to make sure that we are addressing that and continue to address it for the benefit of everyone.
Well, Mr. Mendez, we're projecting that suspensions are going to be down overall. What are the reasons for that, you think?
So there are many reasons and variables, and part of our work with Dr. Fan is to identify those and analyze those to refine them and improve them for next school year. Amongst them that I could attest to is the continual hard work at sites by all stakeholders to support students, to give means of appropriate correction and readdressing these behaviors, supporting these behaviors, reaching out to families. All those are variables that go into a drop in suspension rate.
So if a student is pulled out of class and goes to the Behavior Intervention Center for, say, 3 days, does that count it as a suspension?
No, it is not. And that's one of the possible contributing factors to this data.
And okay, and So I've only got one full board year before this year under my belt, but it seemed like the suspensions really came through at the end of the year. Is that kind of the traditional trend, meaning that by the time we got to February, suspensions either hadn't been worked through the system or the suspendable behavior just hadn't really started yet?
Can you clarify that, Dr. Smith? I didn't understand.
I guess what I'm saying is if we're going to cut the look at our suspensions for this school year off at February, I'm wondering if under normal circumstances, some great percentage of suspensions wouldn't have happened anyway. So really what we're seeing is just the regular trend throughout the year. And so our intervention really isn't moving the needle.
Well, we're seeing an improved trend. It's hard to say how the rest of the school year would have played out. We were still trending to be below last year's 3.6% suspension rate, but it would be hard to decipher that at this time. That's why we went with the projected percentage.
Sure.
I do agree with you, Dr. Smith. I think anecdotally the data could prove us wrong. Anecdotally, though, it does seem that most of the suspensions or expulsions that get to the board are coming in the second semester, closer to summer.
Well, I know we're going to take a deeper dive on this with Dr. Rogers at our retreat on May 2nd. I would just want more assurance that suspendable behavior is actually going down and we've got more restorative practices in place. This isn't just the fact that we're, basically cutting off the time when most suspensions happen. And oh, by the way, we're not counting what used to be a suspension because that kid's not going to the BIC. So, frankly, that's just the same thing happening again. We're just counting it differently. So I'll leave it at that. We can discuss this again later, but
And as I mentioned, the data will be continuing to be analyzed with regards to the factors and the variables that come into play with this reduction of suspension rate. But I can let you know that sites, and I don't have these exact figures, but every single site has increased their ability and their layers of providing students attention, support, and services before it ever gets to a suspension. Further research by Dr. Fan and the team will reveal some of those strategies at the sites and give us a quantifiable measure. And until then, we have these figures, and they show us both, as you mentioned, they show us where we're at and what we need to continue to work on.
Right. Well, look, I'll back off on this topic, but look, I believe in you, Mr. Mendez, and I believe in our staff. I just, as the trustee, I want to make sure we're seeing the outcome that we want to see from the inputs that we're putting in.
Yes, our goal one of our goals in people services is for the things that we support in to decrease overall. And by decreasing some elements of people services that we support, then by just the common math, we'll see an increase in everything else like learning and behavior and increased positive behaviors, etc. So yes, we're on the same page.
All right, thank you.
And so to conclude, and I'll take further questions after this last slide, we will, people services and any aspect that I work with will always be under a continuous improvement plan. Refinement, the collaboration, the refinement of our practices to improve will always be a staple of anything that I help lead. Amongst these items that we will continue to move forward with is to plan to develop an accountability system, and some of this was mentioned in the questions, to assess how we're doing, the fidelity and the effectiveness of programs like BIC, programs like the layers that we have through PBIS and the tiered supports. We also want to continue to give timely and targeted supports to our sites. We had 74 professional development opportunities. We want to increase those professional development opportunities. And we also want to make sure that we continue to enhance relationship building and engagement of students, because we know that if we do that, the two previous slides will reflect more data that will show further student success. So We would like to increase attendance, and then our goal is to decrease exclusionary practices. With that, I will take any further questions or suggestions, comments.
Dr. Langdon, yes.
Yes. I would love to have you talk more about the parent project.
So the parent project we successfully 12 sets of parents graduated and were part of 8 3-hour training sessions to improve how they address their children with behavioral problems, whether they're at school or at home. And our first session took place during the first semester of the first half of the school year, and approximately 25 families began the process, and 12 successfully graduated at the end of its implementation. And 2 of our counselors, Tanita Simone and Alejandra Ramirez Juarez, were essential to that parent project. It was very well received. The parents had nothing but praise and an acknowledgement for that. The second session tragically was cut short by the COVID pandemic and our school closures. So we have no ability. I believe that we had the second session, and then after that we had to cancel it. It's a well-received program. It's a very intense program that part of its foundation is to make sure that parents attend all 8 sessions. And we're going to continue as part of one of the components of People Services that we're going to continue to refine and take a look at.
Okay, thank you. I also have a question about can you flip to the slide with the, I was going to call it the teeter-totter. It's a scale?
Yes, yes, a scale, yes.
So I get that it's creating a balance. Are you trying to tell us that the external factors outweigh the district factors, or are you just using a graphic to show that it's a balance? I don't know if you're trying to say this is, you see what I'm saying? Like, is it really, are you showing it's out of balance, or are you saying it's a constant balance?
You know, Dr. Langdon, I think I want to depict both. I think I want everyone to understand that we have lots of things that we need to take into account to ensure that people are receiving supports. And I want that acknowledged that sometimes, although we want it to work well and be thorough and be the best possible, sometimes there's things that we have to work through, not necessarily barriers, but items that we have to work through to ensure that. So if anything, it's a depiction of the hard work that we do every single day for student success.
Thanks. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay. I don't see any other questions from the board. So, Mr. Mendez, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move now to the next item, also in the report section, item 8B, Gifted and Talented Education Program. Ms. Whipple.
Thank you, President Cox. And so another one of our hardworking members of our educational services team is Mr. Kevin Smith. He is our Director of Special Education and our Gifted and Talented Program. And tonight, a little change from our traditional presentation. We're going to focus this time tonight on our Gifted and Talented information for you, updating the enrollment and the outcome of our implementation of the enhancements that the board challenged us with and supported us with this year. So with that, Mr. Kevin Smith.
Okay, let me pull up the presentation. All right, so good evening, everybody. It's nice to see your faces, and I'm glad to see that you guys are all healthy. I hope your family is as well. So I'm going to dig right into it on page 2. This is just a graphic of the students that we evaluated this year, kind of what we were able to catch with our net. So as you can see, I have it as second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade. What that is all about is this, think of it as next year's second graders, next year's third graders, and so on and so forth. With the students that we evaluated in first grade this year, 22 students, exactly the same as we had last year, qualified, and we had 18 students so far have accepted placement for next year, which is good. Third grade, so our second graders that took the test this year, we had 6 of those students meet eligibility, and all 6 of them have said, heck yeah, we're in. So that's great. And then the third graders that we evaluated this year, it was around a little over 1,200 students, which was a pretty monumental task, and one that the psychologists, I've got to get my hats off to them. They did a tremendous job, and for all the teachers to be easygoing with it and willing to help out where we needed it, that was great. And admin too, they did a good job helping coordinate everything. What's exciting is that, you know, we captured 30 students that met eligibility. The downside is that so far we only have 11 students that have accepted placement into the program, and I'll get into why for that grade level as well as some of the other ones in just a second. Fifth grade we had 1 student that met eligibility, and in sixth grade we had 2. I don't have seventh grade up here, but we had 1 student that met eligibility. We had just a couple students in seventh grade that tested this year. If you look at last year, if you take the third grade out of the third graders that we tested last year, take them out of the pool because it's not apples to apples. It's since we did the whole grade. We had 172 students total, excluding third graders last year that tested. This year we had 130 that signed up to test. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what our numbers were. Pretty consistent, although that's the second year that we're down in students electing to take the test on their own. So last year we had 28 third graders that participated in the assessment. This year, obviously, we had 1,200 some odd students. But when you look at the reason, and Dr. Smith, thank you for your email. We actually, I received an email from Dr. Smith wanting to know kind of what's the issue with transportation. Is there a solution that we have for that if that is one of the areas of non-participation? And there's 3 main factors that have come up with the parents that we've talked to. One of them is keeping their kids together at the same school. Students that just don't want to leave the school that they're at, and then transportation as being an issue for them. And to break it down a little bit, you know, out of the third graders that tested this year, 4 of them just wanted to stay at their school. 2 of the families didn't want to split up the siblings. If we were able to guarantee a school of choice for the other kids, then they would have thought about it further. And then 2, because of transportation. We had 1 family who has 2 students that met eligibility, but they wanted to know how the district dealt with the COVID-19 crisis before they made a decision. And then we have about nine families that we have been trying to contact, haven't had a phone call back. We keep trying though. We will keep trying every other day and see if we can get some more participation. With that, we had a room for 11 students in the class for next year at Burbank. So, you know, I did have, you know, I really wanted to open up another class. We had room over at Charles Wright. It just doesn't pencil out right now with what we have. Now, if those other 9 families actually call us back and say, hey, we want to be in, that could change things a little bit, possibly. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So,
Dr. Smith, before you move on from this slide, maybe I missed something. I apologize. I'm confused.
Okay.
Are these numbers the students who are eligible of the students who decided to take the test versus how we tested all 3rd graders universally? I don't quite understand. I look at this, like where the disconnect for me is we tested 1,200 3rd graders and only 5 were eligible. I'm confused.
No. So what you're seeing on the graph, this is next year's class. So
yeah,
they're going to be the 1st graders that are going in the 2nd grade, which is what you're looking at. The 2nd graders that tested that are represented as the 3rd graders here. So look at 4th grade. Those are the 3rd graders that we tested this year. 30 students qualified out of the 1,200 somewhat.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. That, quite frankly, that doesn't make it better. 30 out of 1,200 is absolutely ridiculous. What are we doing things? Is this normal?
Well, you're looking at your top 2 to 3%. So, I mean, we went down to the 90th percentile instead of sticking at the 95th percentile. That's where we came out. I mean, I other than that, I don't know what to tell you other than, you know, they all take the same test. It's a time test, 30 minutes. I don't know.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry.
I just see, it seems very disconcerting to me. That seems really worrisome to me. Makes my mind to go other places and wonder about other things. That this just seems minuscule, and it makes me think that well, I don't know what I think.
President Cox, it may be helpful if staff were able to get some comparative data on qualification rates in surrounding districts, and we can come back with that information.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers, because, you know, when the board asked for universal testing, I don't think that we were asking for it just to perform another exercise. The goal of that was to increase participation in GATE. You know, so I'm obviously not saying, you know, and I accept Dr. Smith's or Mr. Smith's, you know, explanation. The test is the test, right? We can't cook the books to make the results look better, so to say, I guess. But maybe we need to rethink this because I don't think this is what the rest of the board was expecting. It's not what I was expecting.
I wasn't either. I was expecting about twice as many students. So
maybe the other Mr. Smith could jump in here. You know, the board was looking for a lot of different things, and I know Mr. Smith has more presentation to give us, but you know, my sense is that we were wanting to raise awareness of GATE. We were wanting to find children who might have been at schools where you know, the notion of going to GATE wasn't something that was discussed in the family or in the classroom. And we were also looking, you know, to take some risk and find some more kids who are interested and qualified and try to prime the pump, so to speak. Looking to me like it's not so much an issue that we didn't find some cognitively gifted children who qualify and should be in GATE. We've got a conversion rate problem, right? We've got issues surrounding, you know, parents not wanting to have to do 2 drop-offs in the morning. So those sorts of considerations seems to have trumped the opportunity for a child to go into the gifted program. And I don't know that was something that we discussed a year ago. I think we really should drill down on that. You know, if the answer is kind of the other concept we talked about a year ago, which is trying to increase and shore up attendance in the primary GATE program at Burbank or wherever it happens to be, but also identifying children who are sort of in that next percentage layer, so to speak, you know, kids who were scoring 80 and above on the GATE test.
Sure.
And the term that I kept using over and over again, perhaps bluntly, was is there room for a GATE-like program or GATE-like activities that can be directed to kids who are clearly talented, but maybe didn't score high enough to make a GATE admission, worthwhile. So I kind of think that one of the things that we need to think about as a board and with staff is, we have this tremendous resource. We have more talented kids. How can we work harder and smarter to get these kinds of services to them?
Completely agree, and that's something that I want to address towards the end of the presentation. 3% of 1,200s, you're looking at 36 students. So even though we're off by a handful, we still should have seen about 10 more students that met eligibility. So Mr. Cox, you're right. I completely agree. So we'll continue to do that, and we can get some comparative data, absolutely, from other districts around.
I also wonder if we're not talking about hundreds of kids, we're talking about handfuls of kids. And I heard something in there about how families, if we could guarantee school of choice, if we want to put together, if we want to collect up the 2.5, this top group, and they're all over the place, then maybe we need to make some stipulations that say, we will work hard. It's one thing if a kid says, I don't want to leave my school. It's another thing when the parents say, we'd send the whole family, but we're not going to drop 3 kids off at, 2 different places.
Sure.
So I don't know, it's almost like we need to see this all the way through. I'm glad that we tested all these kids. I know that there were people who didn't know about it and they couldn't get their kid over to John Muir on the one Saturday it happened. So I think this was absolutely the equity move to make. If the cutoff point is wherever it is and we get 2.5%, I'd like to see if that's happening other places. But I'd also like to see, let's do everything in our power. If we believe in the GATE program, let's do everything in our power. Let's come up with creative transportation plans. Maybe we waive school of choice for this handful of kids. I don't want stupid policies to get in the way of something that we were trying to open up.
Sure, and Mr. Cox's comment last year that you guys want to see a sea of change, it rings in my ear every day. So we're trying to go that way, and we started the conversation last week about transportation and what that could look like, what that the pros and cons of all that. So that's definitely a conversation that we'll continue to have and to hammer some of those things out for sure.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on to the next slide? No. Okay. Staff development was big this year. Dr. Keeley was a home run hitter on this one. She was able to commit with New Tech High School and a person named Aaron Eisenberg, who was the consultant, and he actually, I think it was 3 or 4 days that we actually were able to get, and we had more planned last month, but we had a little hiccup in what's going on at schools right now, so we had to delay that right now. But great information. Some of the classrooms are already starting to use the project-based learning and absolutely love it. It's wonderful to see the kids really get in and get deep with some of this information. We had one classroom that Ms. Avila's class that sent us letters thanking us for the PBL training, the project-based learning training, and that was nice to see. It's awesome. When we're in the office over here, we don't get to work closely with the kids, so to see something like that was great. And then we're also in February, I was able to put something together for the cabinet and for the UC San Diego extension program for GATE certification for our teachers. And when I kind of surveyed the staff, the teachers were very interested in doing this, and doing this online even made it easier. It's 12 units, 4 classes. They can knock it out in a couple of months, or they can take their time and do one class at a time over the year. So that is something I hope that with what's going on right now doesn't derail that, because I think that's going to be key in helping the program grow. And we
Mr.
look
Smith,
at,
if we could, before we leave that, I mean,
yeah.
I'm right there with you. If we're going to have a GATE program, we need our GATE teachers to be certified. And we've got a fantastic group of folks. I just wanted to ask you, who's paying for that certification process? Is it the district, or are we asking the teachers to foot the bill, or something in between?
It would be the district, and we'd pay the tuition and the overtime for taking. That's
Perfect.
what that was the proposal that I put forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And so, you know, part of our goal is to provide equity, opportunity, and access to all GATE eligible students. That was one reason we changed over to a new assessment tool last year. Being nonverbal, it's culture free, it's language free. Anybody can take the tests, and it's timed. And it's nice because when it comes to a scheduling and facilitation aspect of things, it's wonderful. It's pretty simple to give. It's all done online. We're able to send home really professional score reports, and we did that this year again. We were able to do this on all school sites again for the third year in a row. We've tested 100% of the students that signed up, and then we also took some well beyond the last date that we were going to take tests. So we went ahead and added a few on there. It's not that big of a deal. So we want to be able to give students a choice where they're going to go to school, where they can, you know, continue, you know, get that depth and complexity without having to leave their school. So we want them to be able to stay with their friends and continue with their siblings. So, you know, moving forward, I think we're at that point where we need to design what that can look like. And Dr. Smith, you had a great point where, and I completely know what you're talking about when you say there's GATE-like, but, you know, high achievers, not necessarily the ones that are scoring at the top 2 and 2nd and 3rd percentiles, but, you know, maybe get the good, you know, the 5th or the 6th even, and see what we can do to challenge them a little bit without having to leave school and
exactly
your friends. So that kind of leads me into the next slide, where I wanted, you know, Dr. Rogers has asked me, let's put together a GATE design team, because we talked about the conundrum that we're at, where, you know, we're trying to blow this thing up and really get the kids that need that differentiation, get them that education that they desire and that they're thirsting for. So we're going to go ahead and put a team together, and Dr. Smith, you graciously accepted to be on that team, and we have a professor from UC Merced who also has children that have been in the GATE program before. We have a parent, Mrs. Lodwick, that's going to be part of this, and teachers and our school psychologist, and Dr. Keeley and Superintendent Dr. Rogers. He'll be at the meetings too. And with that, I'm going to task the team to come up with what GATE could look like if we had it at all sites. Not necessarily let's ditch what we're doing at Burbank. I think what we're doing at Burbank's nice, but we need to have more options for kids. And I think if we have more options, you're naturally going to be able to grow everything nice and predictably. So we're going to continue with the whole grade testing unless you have a different direction that you want to go. I think that, you know, last year we evaluated, we found we had, let's see, yeah, we had 8 students that met eligibility. And by doing the whole grade, we were able to find 31 or 30 students this year. So, you know, I don't think it's a waste, and I don't think it's just an activity that we went through. I think it was good information. I mean, it was data, you know, and that's going to help us make our decisions going forward. But I also think that the project-based learning is one of the key ways to go. And adding to that, we might want to do that too and have some other options in that regard. So by having the TLs and TSAs and the training, that helps with some of the infrastructure concerns that if you were to have it on every site, who could help participate or who could help facilitate and be a resource for teachers and for students. So with that, any questions?
I'm maybe digging down in the weeds a little bit here. I just, out of curiosity, I think the gate design team is a great idea. It's wonderful to have representation from UC Merced, but I'm not sure that that's the ultimate audience for this. I would also be curious to know, getting some input from the high school district, perhaps their IB or AP programs might be a little closer aligned to what we're trying to do in GATE. So I would just a passive suggestion that we include that too if we're going to start inviting in some outside professionals.
Okay.
Well, and I just have a process question here. So we have a board member sitting on a design team, which is kind of a committee. I just think that this is a committee, or is it something that, I don't know. I just feel like we had this whole conversation about committees, and then here's a committee that is new information that if there's a board member on it, is that a process? Is that a rotating thing? Shane is going to have his ticket punched 4 or 5 different times. I don't want these to be multiple processes. I think we need to have a sense of, distribution of labor, division of labor. So just
well, I can leave, you guys can take it amongst yourselves to figure out who you want to be on there. If you think Shane's being overworked, or Dr. Smith, is being overworked, that's absolutely perfectly appropriate.
I think we can move on now. I don't think we need to tell Mr. Smith who we want on there now or anything. I do think Dr. Langdon brings up a good point that we'll circle back around on with committees. Actually, as I was going through the bylaws, looking at the committee information, we really do. The board probably should be formally appointing any board member who's acting in any board member type capacity. So outside of the board meeting, of course. Thank you, Dr. Langdon, for bringing that up.
Okay.
Happy to have it be a part of a larger discussion. This is something that Mr. Smith that I had talked about probably a couple of weeks ago. I also happen to be the board member who's also a GATE parent. But happy to balance responsibilities or hear what other people have to think.
Yeah, I just personally, I think we should definitely talk about it again, because I would, like I said, this is great, have a GATE design team. I was hoping eventually we would get to a place where we would have a board committee for special ed, for lack of a better term, particularly to focus on GATE, on Montessori, on any sort of language academy or any other institute or program that is non-general ed. And I know that our board, we had talked about that and agreed upon that in principle previously. So I would really love to see us not just hone in on GATE, but also, we have all committed to boostering Montessori as well. Let's not forget.
We were calling them like innovative educational experiences, like GATE and Montessori and a dual immersion program that was talked about and I haven't heard much about. So yeah, I think that's all part of a larger conversation. I'm not trying to get Shane out of any work or get him bounced off a committee. I'm just saying we're having a conversation about process. So this is an example of what is our process. So
yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, President Cox raises a good point. This isn't, GATE uber alles, and, Montessori is equally important. And you're right, there was a huge board push to start. This is supposed to be the year where we're talking about building dual immersion, and we need to get back to that. So I think President Cox is right. I think a gate design team makes sense. I think a Montessori design team makes sense. I think a dual immersion design team makes sense. But how we fit all those pieces together, that probably deserves its own discussion. I would agree.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith, I have one question before we lose our time with you. And this kind of brings us back to COVID, right? Unfortunately, this is part of every conversation. So you and staff have done a tremendous job to get our distance learning system where it is, right? Think about where we were 2 months ago, right? But I don't have to tell you that, there's no gate specific, so to speak, curriculum. I know individual teachers, my daughter's teacher, Mrs. Abarca, is really working hard to make her offerings gate specific. Sure. So maybe just think about, right, if we have to go back into a lockdown mode next fall, what can we have prepared so that our gate kids, and I know you don't do Montessori, but I think any of these special programs, how can we differentiate their learning experience as well if we have to do this all over again?
Sure. Thank you.
No, thank you for listening, and thank you for your presentation.
Absolutely.
Mr. Smith, is that it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay. We're going to move now to the rest of our calendar. We are at item 9, the consent calendar. What's the board's pleasure?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Langdon and Ms. Kazakos. I'll remind everyone that because we are meeting telephonically, we are required to do roll call votes. So I will call the question and ask Dr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Kazakos.
Aye.
Dr. Langdon.
Aye.
Mr. Lopez.
Aye.
I am aye as well. The motion is carried. Thank you. We're at item number 10A, Board Action Superintendent for Resolution number S02 2019-2020. Dr. Rogers, or Ms. Hoypel.
Actually, I think I'd like to call
that would be
on Mr. Collins.
yes.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers and President Cox. Before I get into the more scripted information from the agenda, I wanted to speak to this item a little bit more. The bad news is that typically in the middle of May of each school year, we have an annual district employee appreciation picnic. And we are obviously, due to the shelter in place and the rules in place right now, having to cancel that officially. However, I want to take this opportunity also to just recognize and thank all of the employees, the board, and all of the employees in our district. We will continue to honor our employees with their years of service pins, as well as retirement plaques, as we do every year. And lastly, before I get into the background of this particular item, I just want to take the opportunity to just say thank you to all of our employees. Special shout out to our essential employees right now, and our food service employees, S&S department, and not just Doug Williams, which was mentioned earlier, but Patty Murato, Mary Williams, and the entire department and their team, warehouse, you name it. What they're doing right now is pretty amazing. And also shout out to our IT department with device distribution. So things are very unique right now, and we're sad to cancel the employee appreciation picnic, but we are going to carry on with the other traditions the best we can. And to read this little bit of background on this agenda item before the recommendation, teachers nationwide, and who are all adjusting to distance learning, are honored for their commitment, skill, and lifelong positive impact on students on National Teacher Appreciation Day. Teacher Appreciation Week is a week-long celebration and recognition of teachers and the contributions they make to education and society, and it's the first full week of May every year. Education Support Professionals Day was made to honor and recognize contributions educational support professionals make to public education. In 1987, the National Education Association Representative Assembly called for the creation of a special day to honor the contributions of public school support staff. And so, with all of this information, it is recommended that the Board of Education adopt resolution number S02-2019-2020, proclaiming May 5th, 2020 as National Teacher Appreciation Day, May 4th through 8th, 2020 as as Teacher Appreciation Week, and May 19th, 2020 as Education Support Professionals Day.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Third.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments from the board? All right, seeing none, I'll just give my thanks to all of our employees, classified, certificated, administrative. Thank you to everyone dealing with everything that's going on. And I'm going to call the question now. Dr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Kazakos.
Aye.
Dr. Langdon.
Aye.
Mr. Lopez.
Aye.
I am aye as well. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're moving now to item 11, administrative services. Unless a board member has an objection, I would ask that we adopt all of these in one motion, unless there is another reason that we need to discuss one.
I have no objection. I just point out that I had submitted some feedback on the proposed contract with the county for the temporary use of Cruikshank. But I support entering into that contract, so no objection. So having them decided as a slate, excuse me.
Thank you. Is that a motion, Dr. Smith?
It will be. I move to approve each of the contracts in 11A through E.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Kazakos. And I will, unless there are any other questions or comments from the board. Okay. Dr. Rogers, any comments from staff on these items?
I think those items are pretty straightforward. Yeah. We do have Mr. Williams here to add any clarification if needed, but otherwise I think it's pretty much as it stands.
Okay, thank you. And I did not hear and I'm not seeing any questions from the board. So I'll call the question. Dr. Smith.
Aye.
Thank you. Ms. Kazakos.
Aye.
Dr. Langdon.
Aye.
Mr. Lopez.
Aye.
And I am aye as well. That motion is carried. Thank you. Item number 12, 12A, Personnel Services, the revised job description, Director of Preschool and Child Development Programs, first reading. Oh, hang on here. My dang computer froze. Okay, there we go. Mr. Meisenheimer. Oh, I think you're muted.
You're muted, Mr. Meisenheimer.
That worked.
Can somebody text him? President Cox, we made it this far. That's pretty good.
Right, we did.
I'm calling him right now. Brian, you're muted.
Greg, could Greg unmute him?
Maybe it's the host of the meeting.
I think he's got a bad headset.
Okay, Doug, would you go ahead and take us through this item? It's pretty straightforward item. Just go through the background and
Yes. Let me get there. Make sure I'm not muted. The Director of Preschool and Child Development Programs is vital in continual development of the preschool program. This current job description was last updated in May of 2015, and the roles and responsibilities as it relates to licensing, supervision, leadership, interaction with other agencies has changed, and it's necessitated an update. Therefore, it is recommended that the Board of Education consider and approve the revised job description for the position of Director of Preschool and Child Development Programs as a first reading.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. There is a motion and a second. Are there questions or comments from the board?
Mr. Collins, do we do background checks on our preschool directors?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dr. Smith.
I was just going to say, so everybody is aware, I had suggested to Mr. Meisenheimer that we include that as one of the conditions for employment, that they be able to pass a reference check and a criminal background check.
Brian, I think you're in now. Are you in? No, he's not in.
Nope.
It's not working. And Dr. Smith, obviously employees of the school district are all fingerprinted. That's part of it. So that's, of course, and we always do reference checks. We have talked about the level of depth to those in the past, but certainly your admonition is taken.
Well, thank you. No further comments.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Mr. Collins, just for clarification for the folks at home watching who may be wondering, we are going through this and revising this job description because the job is soon to be vacant and will be refilled. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So it's time to tune things up. Are there any other questions or comments from the board on this item? Not seeing or hearing anyone. So I will call the question. Dr. Smith.
Aye.
Ms. Kazakos.
Aye.
Dr. Langdon.
Aye.
Mr. Lopez.
Aye.
Thank you. I'm aye as well. The motion does carry. All right, I will ask each of you to review the events calendar. I imagine most of the events are probably canceled. Our governance calendar, which I'm looking forward to discussing with Dr. Rogers and kind of figuring out how this fits in with our plan and you know whether we need it, whether it's something different, whether it gets refined. So looking forward to discussing that again. Are there any questions or comments from the rest of the board on that?
I just have a quick question. Has anyone heard about the Merced County SBA meeting that the dinner got moved, and I'm not sure it's gonna, I haven't heard a new date, but just the mini grant decisions, teachers were gonna get chunks of change, and I wanna make sure that that still happens. I haven't heard anything.
That should have already been done like in March. Did
they distribute it to the teachers?
And Dr. Rogers, have you received anything from MCOE or?
I haven't at this point heard. I'm thinking, Joey, do you have any information on that you can share tonight?
They moved, remember they...
I'm sorry, I was trying to unmute. I can certainly get back to you on that.
Yeah, please.
I just want to make sure, I know the dinner is probably not going to happen. I think they just, you know, they moved it. It was maybe a May date. And I just want to make sure that at some point we celebrate those teachers, that they get that money and that they get the recognition. And I'm, you know, I don't know who won, so I'm anxious to see what, you know, what came of all that.
Thank you for reminding us. I know our district has been, they've usually cleaned up pretty well. Our teachers are usually, you know, at least one of the recipients, if not multiple. So I'm very interested as well. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dr. Langdon. Okay, we're at board member roundtable now. Since we're with you, Dr. Langdon, is there anything else besides MCSBA?
I have notes all over the place here. So let me, I had, I guess the conversation about the end of the school year. I appreciated Mr. Collins's extra special attention to recognizing Teacher Appreciation Day and Staff Appreciation Day, and that will be hard to not do that event, which seems to matter very much to a lot of people, just not the award recipients, but everybody. So that makes me sad too. But I, of course, in my roundtable, I just want to put out the, we just keep kicking the can down the street. And now I am already starting to think about just start date, fall 2020, and the decision-making mechanism. So I'll just put that out there that, you know, as we begin to get more information and think about those things at the board, I hope we have a lot of information and discussions and are engaged in that process. It's, we just keep having to make one decision after next until we really feel like we're on the other side of this. So I'm looking forward to that discussion at our, and others at our May retreat. That's it for me.
Great, thank you.
Be well.
Thank you. Dr. Smith?
Thank you, President Cox. So I just want to echo what Dr. Langdon said, and Mr. Collins, thank you for keeping our 8th graders front and center, not just for the board, but for everybody at the district. You know, whatever the district and the board thinks is the right way to honor our 8th graders and their families, I'm all for it. And I just also want to echo what Dr. Langdon said. You know, I think we're in this horrible situation where this is constantly reacting to crises, right? And I think you all share with me a bit of discomfort not really knowing when and how we can open next year. When's the right time to come back? How are our families going to react? So this is something that I'm thinking about too, and I'm interested to hear what our options are, what our contingencies are, because, you know, look, there isn't going to be a vaccine most likely when we get to the fall. I hope I'm wrong, but this thing is just going to keep going and going until it happens, and, you know, we've got to be ready. So thank you for your continued diligence and doing what you can to get our kids back in school where they need to be.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Ms. Kazakos?
I will just also echo about the 8th grade, our graduates. We are absolutely going to commemorate this great accomplishment. We don't know how yet. And the same with getting back to the next school year, how we do that, what that looks like. All these unknowns, it's hard to operate under not knowing things. But I think our district is doing a great job. And of course, for me, safety is always the most important thing. So all while keeping that in mind. And Dr. Rogers, I'm not sure that we did this in open session. If you wouldn't mind just introducing our new faces before we finish up our meeting. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kazakos. Mr. Lopez?
I mean, I don't think there's much for me to add on. I think a lot of my, a lot of our colleagues have already kind of addressed a lot of the concerns that I have as well, or share with everyone concerning, you know, when we're going to be able to return to normal at some point. But I just want to again thank you know, our district leadership, our staff, you know, our teachers, just everyone for the work that they're doing in helping deliver services to our children, but also to our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to thank again all of our employees. I have been speaking frequently with Dr. Rogers. I've also spoken a number of times with Mr. Arzamendi, and I'm well aware how hard everyone is working. The frontline classified employees and administrators who are still handing out meals and devices and interacting with our students and being that human touch as safely as possible. You know, we thank you, all the classroom teachers and other professionals who are figuring out how to deliver services in the new world. Thank you. I know it's frustrating, and you know, thank you for going through it with us. I've always thought that we have one of the best teams, certainly in the Central Valley, and we will definitely make it through this. But I really do appreciate everyone for everything that all of the energy that's going. I also was going to steal from Dr. Rogers a little bit, and I did want to introduce the new faces that some of you are seeing in our Zoom meeting here. And if you would wave your hand first, I'd like to introduce our new Chief Strategy Officer, Dr. Shella Seaton. And then we also have our new executive director in the pupil services area, Dr. Calpon. He's there in San Francisco. Wonderful, wonderful view of the Golden Gate. And we also have our new chief of staff, Miss Nicole Hamlin. Hello, hello. So thank you all for choosing to join our district. Like I just finished telling everyone else, I think that we have one of the best districts around, and thank you all for consciously becoming part of this district to improve it. We're all really excited. And I have nothing further this evening. Dr. Rogers, is there anything else that you would like to add?
Not at this time. I just want to echo my my trustees' statements welcoming our new people and expressing gratitude to our wonderful staff and faculty. What a great team we have. We're making a difference for kids, folks, so keep going.
All right, thank you, everybody. We do have a board, we were calling it a retreat, but it's a workshop on May 2nd. And then, of course, we'll resume our normal board meetings in this new normal next month. So stay safe and be well. Everyone, thank you for being here this evening, and we will see you later.